The nucleus. Introduction. In cell biology, the nucleus is a membrane-enclosed organelle found in eukaryotic cells. It contains most of the cell's genetic material, organized as a multiple long linear DNA molecules in complex with a large variety of proteins, such as histones, to form chromosomes. The genes within these chromosomes are the cell's nuclear genome. Introduction. Also, the function of the nucleus is to maintain the integrity of these genes and to control the activities of the cell by regulating gene expression. The nucleus is therefore the control center of the cell. The main structures making up the nucleus are the nuclear envelope, a double membrane that encloses the entire organelle and isolates its contents from the cellular cytoplasm, and the nucleus skeleton, which includes nuclear lamina, a network within the nucleus that adds mechanical support much like the cytoskeleton, which supports the cell as a whole. Because the nuclear membrane is impermeable to large molecules, nuclear pores are required that regulate nuclear transport of molecules across the envelope. The pores cross both nuclear membranes, providing a channel through which larger molecules must be actively transported by carrier proteins, which allowing free movement of small molecules and ions. Movement of large molecules such as proteins and RNA through the pores is required for both gene expression and the maintenance of chromosomes. Structures. The nucleus is the largest cellular organelle in animals. In mammalian cells, the average diameter of the nucleus is approximately 6 micrometers, which occupies about 10% of the total cell volume. The viscous liquid within it is called nucleoplasm and is similar in composition to the cytosol found outside the nucleus. It appears as a dense, roughly spherical organelle. Nuclear envelope. The nuclear envelope, otherwise known as nuclear membrane, consists of two cellular membranes, an inner and an outer membrane arranged parallel to one another and separated by 10 to 50 nanometers. The nuclear envelope completely encloses the nucleus and separates the cell genetic material from the surrounding cytoplasm, serving as a barrier to prevent macromolecules from diffusing freely between the nucleoplasm and the cytoplasm. The outer nuclear membrane is continuous with the membrane of the rogue endoplasmic reticulum and is similarly studded with ribosomes. The space between the membranes is called the perinuclear space and is continuous with the rare lumen. Nucleus pores. Nuclear pores, which provide aqueous channels through the envelope, are composed of multiple proteins collectively referred to as nucleoproteins. The pores are about 125 million Daltons in molecular weight and consist of around 50 in yeast to several hundred proteins in vertebrates. The pores are 100 nanometers in total diameter. However, the gap through which molecules freely diffuse is only about 9 nanometers wide, due to the presence of regulatory systems within the center of the pore. This size selectively allows the passage of small water-soluble molecules while preventing larger molecules such as nucleic acids and larger proteins from inappropriately entering or exiting the nucleus. These large molecules must be actively transported into the nucleus instead.
In the previous video, I went off and talked about the Renaissance Festival and how much fun it is, and the walls and the shops and all this stuff. Now I want to get into the middle of the cell, the central command, the command post where things are run, and that is the nucleus. Remember, it is the cell nucleus that makes a cell a eukaryote, as opposed to the non-nucleus cells, which would be the prokaryotes. Now, for those of you who already know something about cell biology, there are some cells in the body that lack a nucleus. We're not talking about that. We're talking about cells that really dig on no nucleus, like bacteria. So the nucleus is the central control area of the cell. Every eukaryote has a nucleus. It contains the genetic material. Most of the cell's DNA is kept in the nucleus. The DNA is the coding for you. It is why you're human, why you're a male or a female, why you have hair, what color is your hair, what color is your eyes. This is your genetic information. It is your coding. And again, we will have further videos down the road in lesson 3 on genetics and heredity, as well as meiosis and mitosis. Typically, the nucleus is the most prominent organelle in the cell. It is the largest membrane-bound compartment in the cell, usually spherical or oval in shape, and about 5 micrometers in diameter. It is surrounded by a double membrane called the nuclear envelope or nuclear membrane. So it's a double layer. It is made of proteins and lipids. Now, if you remember from our very first video in the cell biology section where I said this is my cell biology course and I did my caveat, this would be where a caveat comes in. If this was a cell biology course, we'd actually take more in-depth of a look into just the nucleus and the cell membrane itself. But we're not going to go there. Just know that the nucleus has a dual membrane, a double membrane. It has an inner nuclear membrane and an outer membrane layer. Areas of the nuclear envelope will come together and form pores, nuclear pores. These are gates that let things into and out of the nucleus. If the cell is not dividing, then there will be clumps of thread-like genetic material inside the nucleus called chromatin. It's a mixture of RNA and DNA and proteins that make up the chromosomes. We will again take a closer look at the whole DNA, chromosomes, chromatid, all that in the mitosis and meiosis section of the cell biology videos. Within the nucleus, we can also have something called the nucleolus. The nucleolus is a site of formation of ribosomal RNA in the nucleus. The nucleolus is a spherical area within the nucleus. It's about 1 to 3 micrometers in diameter. In dormant cells, meaning cells that aren't being metabolically active, that aren't dividing, the nucleus, or the nucleolus, is hard to see. It blends in. In active cells, the nucleolus is very visible. There may even be more than one present. In our next video, we're going to take a closer look at cytoplasm, what is cytoplasm, as well as the organ.
Nuclear lamina. The nuclear lamina is composed mostly of lamine proteins. Like all proteins, lamines are synthesized in the cytoplasm and later transported to the nucleus interior, where they are assembled before being incorporated into the existing network of nuclear lamina. Lamines found on the cytosolic phase of the membrane, such as hemerin and nespirin, bind to the cytoskeleton to provide structural support. Lamines are also found inside the nucleoplasm, where they form another regular structure known as the nucleoplasmic veil that is visible using fluorescence microscopy. Chromosomes. The cell nucleus contains the majority of the cell's genetic material in the form of multiple linear DNA molecules organized into structures called chromosomes. Each human cell contains roughly 2 meters of DNA. During most of the cell cycle, these are organized in a DNA-protein complex known as chromatin, and during cell division, the chromatin can be seen to form the well-defined chromosomes familiar from a karyotype. A small fraction of the cell's genes are located instead in the mitochondria.
The nucleus is one of the key things that whenever you see it, you know you're looking at a eukaryotic cell. And it is the brain or control center of the cell because it has the DNA. The DNA holds the genes, which are the instructions of how to build your cell and how to operate your cell. Now, there's 3 major things that you'll see indicated on a diagram of this nucleus that you need to know about, and that's the nuclear envelope, the chromatin, and the nucleolus. Let's take a look at the cell. Here we see in the center of the cell the nucleus, and in fact the word nucleus actually means center. So on the outside you'll see the nuclear envelope. That's the double membrane of the nucleus. Through it you'll see small openings. Those are called the nuclear pores, and those are the structures that allow messenger RNA, mRNA for short, in and out of the cell in order for it to get to the ribosomes so that the cell can make the proteins as per the directions of the DNA. Now within the nucleus you'll find the DNA. Now DNA is in normal cells is in the form called chromatin, and a word that literally means colored stuff with nitrogen in it. So the chromatin is the DNA, which is wrapped up loosely on proteins, and it's throughout the cell. And they call it a colored stuff with nitrogen in it because when they're first looking through cells, or looking at cells through microscopes, they couldn't see anything. So they started adding dyes, and they added a dye that stuck to nucleic acids like DNA. And so what they saw was, hey, there's colored stuff, and we know it has nitrogen in it, so we'll call it colored stuff with nitrogen in it, chromatin. Now, they saw sometimes that there would be other regions within the nucleus that got even darker. We know now that's because right there in the nucleolus, which means little center of the center thing, we have not just DNA, but we also have another kind of nucleic acid called ribosomal RNA. And so because that ribosomal RNA is being made right here in the nucleolus, it collects more of the stain and looks darker. So, to summarize, we have the nucleus with the nuclear envelope on the outside.
Nucleolus. The nucleolus is a discrete, densely stained structure found in the nucleus. It is not surrounded by a membrane and is sometimes called a suborganelle. It forms around tandem repeats of rDNA, DNA, coding for ribosomal RNA. These regions are called nuclear organizer regions. The main roles of the nucleolus are to synthesize rRNA and assemble ribosomes. The structural cohesion of the nucleolus depends on its activity, as ribosomal assembly in the nucleolus results in the transient association of nuclear components, facilitating further ribosomal assembly and hence further association.
Inside eukaryotic cells, which are complex cells that have organelles, genetic information is stored in a structure called the nucleus. Known as the control center of the cell, the nucleus is contained by a double membrane called the nuclear envelope, which works to protect the DNA by controlling what types of molecules can enter or exit. The nuclear envelope uses pores that allow certain substances to enter and leave. Inside the nucleus is an area called the nucleolus. The nucleolus plays an important role in turning genetic information into reality. RNA is synthesized in the nucleolus from the DNA code that makes up who you are. Parts of ribosomes, a cell organelle, are made in the nucleolus and moved through pores in the nuclear envelope. A new piece of furniture is usually carried through a doorway as a box full of materials before it's assembled inside a house. That's the way that the pores in the nuclear envelope work with ribosomes. Once the subunits of ribosomes are transported outside the nuclear envelope, they can be assembled. Ribosomes are very important to living things. They're the site where proteins are made. Proteins are used in the body to build structures. In the same way that lumber is used to build a house, proteins are the scaffolding of the human body. When cells divide, they need to pass genetic information onto new cells. The genetic information in the nucleus is stored in long strings of DNA called chromatin. When cells prepare to divide, they organize their DNA. Chromatin is condensed down into structures called chromosomes. Chromosomes are split and passed on to offspring in order to pass a copy of DNA to newly formed cells. Possibly the most important part of cells, their DNA, is protected and stored in the nucleus.